It is no secret that this year has been a tough one for sales. And I think there are some fundamental changes underneath that have changed the way that business works. Today, we're talking with a new company that is using AI to build your pipeline. So stay tuned. I'm talking with Vitaly Golomb, co-founder and CEO of SofieLabs. Sofie is a next-gen CRM that uses AI to automate the sales process, addressing the challenges of maximizing your marketing to enhance your inbound sales process. With companies desperate to build pipelines, Sofie provides businesses with an always available, multilingual, global virtual workforce. So let's talk with Vitaly about the state of the industry and how Sofie can help you grow in a challenging environment. Welcome, Vitaly.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
As I mentioned in the intro, we are definitely in strange times. And I'm talking to my friends in sales organizations all over the place. And so many companies, it seems right now, are like struggling with pipeline. And I think this year is a particularly strange year because we've got, the politics of an election year. We've got, all sorts of things going on with the economy. And then we've got this huge and incredibly disruptive rise of AI, right? Nobody knows where everything's going. So I think there's a lot of confusion in the market and people are really trying to figure out, like, how do I build pipeline in this crazy world that we're in? Could you talk a little bit about like what you're seeing in the market and why you are focused in this space?
A lot is happening right now, as you said. The information space is really, really polluted in a way that salespeople especially are struggling to get people's attention. And when you have so much thrown at you and you're busy with social media and this and that, the last thing you're going to do is engage with salespeople. So that's actually, that's a good way to kind of start thinking about what we're doing because, there's a lot, on the business side of communication, there's a lot of AI tools being deployed and we're seeing a lot of like AI spam. Everybody is getting a lot of hope this email finds you wells in their inbox.
Absolutely.
And the marketing function is struggling, right? How do you get that attention? How do you create that demand? We're a little bit down the chain. We're helping sales teams really make whatever leads come in much more efficient with this initial product that we put out there. It's tough, and it's also an arms race because you have a lot of companies trying different things, and if something works, they have an unfair advantage, and everybody else has to start using the same approach. And a lot of companies and a lot of salespeople, they've been doing it for a long time. These are kind of well-exercised muscles. And for them to learn these new tricks, it's very difficult to keep up. So it's a really interesting transition time right now that we see, with a new generation of technology every decade or so, where we get to solve the same old problems, but in a completely different new way that gives us kind of a technology leverage. And that's really the definition of disruptive technology, is disrupting the old ways of doing things.
Right. Well, and AI is hugely disruptive. And I think, things have really kind of changed. There's like almost a generational shift that I'm seeing too, where people are starting off online. They're going online. They're checking out web pages. They're going to look at videos and articles and things like that. And it's not so much that kind of outreach thing that people used to do. Let's go get lunch and this, that, and the other thing, and let's find out about it. People are really they want information, and they want information immediately. And, you got to catch them when they're curious.
We're all busier, right? And we don't have time to sit there and, I'm going to go to this trade show and in some months, and then I'm going to talk to everybody there, and then I'm going to make a decision. No, you have to make a decision now. And for salespeople, that's tough because they don't get an opportunity to build that relationship and really stand out on a relationship basis. Rather, by the time that lead comes in, it's very likely that they've already looked at 10 different things, 10 different products. They already know, they're kind of shopping, they're trying to compare things. And there was a Harvard Business Review study and article that we noticed that said that if you don't respond to that inbound inquiry within the first 5 minutes, your chances of qualifying that lead go down by 90%.
That's crazy.
That's staggering. So it's really whoever answers first That's probably the biggest factor. The second biggest factor for us is if you customize and personalize that response, it's not just an autoresponder, but it's a personalized response that shows that you've taken the time to go and understand who that person is, what their problems might be, what their company is, and you have an intelligent response to them, your chances of closing that deal go up 600%, right? So these are the two kind of main drivers for us at the onset that we're looking at. On the flip side, a lot of times, we're in the business, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but what we're doing is essentially automating that inbound SDR function. And the inbound SDRs are usually the youngest, least experienced, kind of entry level, first job out of college type of job. And and they're also really eager to please and set up those appointments. And what ends up happening is that half the time the account executive gets on that call that was scheduled by the SDR, that lead is not qualified. And they know it, and they try to requalify, right at the beginning of the conversation. And they know half the time they're going to roll their eyes back, go through the demo for an hour, waste an hour of their life, and it's not going to result in anything, no matter what they say. So
it's usually like at the end of it, it's like, do I get my free AirPods now?
Exactly.
I listen to your pitch.
Could be that. Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't do anything for the account executive. It's frustrating. It's incredibly frustrating. So we try to, and the first step is we make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. No lead goes unanswered very, very quickly. You engage with them first. You engage with them in a very high quality way. And if there's a there, then we can get them set up with the account executive. But we're able to ask them those qualifying questions and really get the right answer. And if they're just looking around, and one day they might be a good customer for you, so they're a marketing qualified lead, great. We will nurture them. We will come back to them. We'll follow up with them in 30 days or 90 days or in 6 months, where that SDR might be long gone. They might be an account executive by then, or they've churned out of your business, and that relationship is gone forever. We'll actually follow up. But we're not going to set up that sales call until we understand that lead is truly qualified. And the results we're getting because of that are really, really, really positive. For the same marketing budget, we're setting up 3 times more qualified sales calls for salespeople, in the combination of those things.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. I mean, I think that, what I see is companies are cutting costs all over the board. And I see them getting rid of, their top performing salespeople because they're expensive and they just don't want to, they don't want to pay them. And either they leave or they, they're kind of pushed out. And you look at companies, after 2020, the trade show industry just like took a nosedive, and I don't think it's recovered, and I'm not sure it's going to recover like it used to, because like the point you were making, I mean, people don't want to just wait to go to that trade show. I mean, it was great because you could get all your customers in one spot, and like you build lists and things like that. But the cost was pretty significant for that. So like when we talk bang for your buck, it's kind of about doing the basics a lot of time that helps drive your biggest bang for your buck. And I think a lot of people get focused on the shiny things, and they don't focus on the things that are really going to drive value in their business and drive sales and drive pipeline, right?
Yeah, I mean, events are still an important part of the marketing mix, but you can't afford to just over-rely on that and say, okay, we do 3 events a year, and that's when we get all of our leads. That doesn't work anymore. Yeah. And when we look at, companies, a lot of companies that we work with are, for example, SaaS companies. SaaS companies that are day in, day out, this is their bread and butter. They spend half of their OpEx, half of their budget in the company on marketing and sales. And what they're doing is they're figuring out, okay, what marketing channels work? Where can we create the strongest magnet? We're doing, any kind of inbound marketing. We're creating, generating demand for our product. We're out there when people are looking, and we're bringing them to the website. And then what happens after that? If you don't have an efficient sales process, and you don't have good data going back and forth, that's when you drop the ball. That's when you wasted all these marketing efforts, and it doesn't actually get to the finish line. Yeah. So that's kind of where we focus. And for us, what you hit on as well is, budgets are changing. We've had this duopoly of Salesforce and HubSpot for many, many years now. Right. And you can see what's happening this year with both. Well, they're expensive, but they're kind of necessary evil, right? They're a minimum. And what you're seeing is they're stumbling a little bit because you have companies now trying different things, and they have to budget. They have to take their same technology budget they had before and allocate it to these other new tools because their competitors are using them. Right. And they feel like they're falling behind if they don't start using that as well. So this is that moment where, we're excited. My co-founder and I, Jonathan Romley and I, we've known each other for a long time, but we've also been through this many times, and we've built companies. And timing is very important, and the timing is now, seen as disruption. This is the time to build something new. And for Salesforce and HubSpot, we've used those products for years. We're big fans, but they have a big challenge on their hands, which is, if they don't make changes, they're going to get disrupted. But they also can't make big enough changes to cannibalize their own existing business. They're in a tough spot as two public companies, right?
Right.
And we saw what happened with Salesforce earnings. First time they missed in a long time.
Right.
So we see this as an opportunity in the market to kind of stand out. There's a lot of kind of outbound, automated spam out there, and we're definitely not in that business.
Right.
We're in the business of helping sales teams, real sales teams that have operations that know what they're doing, and it's kind of the lifeblood of their business. We're helping them substantially improve these two critical points in the process.
And I want to throw one other thing in there. I've been in many positions where I've used Salesforce in the past, and it's a really difficult tool for organizations to deploy because it's a very complex and unwieldy one. It's not, in the early days, it was just sort of a very purpose-built tool, but now it's a very generalist kind of tool. And there's just 1,000 different ways to do 1,000 different things in there. And I think for a lot of people, they step into it and they go, ooh, wow, that's a lot to figure out, right? And it seems like
bring on a new CRM, these days is a 6-month professional services project.
Yeah.
Right. It takes a long time to set up. It's become really complicated.
Yeah.
That's actually one of another area that we really pay attention to is like I said, right now we live inside of the CRM. We live in your existing environment, and we perform this function, essentially kind of replacing grunt work with automation. Right? You can think of it that way. But ultimately, what we are building is what will become the next generation CRM. Because if you think about Salesforce, especially, it's super complicated, or HubSpot, or you name it.
Yeah.
It's an interface designed to process a lot of information and present it for human consumption with sequences and this and that. But at the end of the day, what do you want? You want to make sure that you don't miss anything that comes in from the marketing channel. Do you optimize your marketing channels? You're not wasting money on things that don't work. That you are able to very quickly screen what comes in and kind of not waste time on things that won't convert. And that you're empowering your salespeople with the right leads. It's the Glengarry leads. Coffee is for closers.
Drive a fancy car, not have the steak knives.
Exactly. So, but you want to empower them, right? Having built sales teams, you also don't want to give salespeople any excuses, right? You want to give them all the tools, and then they shine. But the way we approach it is, the way we envision this is that any sales operation has what's called a sales playbook, right? These are the training materials. This is the training manual that says, okay, this is what our ideal prospect looks like. Here are the qualifying questions. Here's a bit information about here's the rebuttals and the common questions that come up. So we take that, and with that one input, we can set up your entire process. We can set up the entire CRM. So it goes from 6 months of professional services and hundreds of thousands of dollars, really, for most companies, and like this big hassle with just give us your document and we'll set up the process for you and you're done. I mean, it's magic, right? It's a huge leap, and that's what this generation of technology allows us to do.
I don't know that everybody is familiar with what the role of an SDR is, right? And I know, it's a necessary evil in a lot of organizations, but it tends to be a big pain point for many of the reasons that you mentioned, with just like not really qualified meetings, and not good follow up, and they're sort of young and inexperienced typically that are kind of getting into it, so they're not presenting the best face for the company, things like that. So they're losing a lot of inbound kind of opportunities, right? Can you speak to like what an SDR is and what the role of an SDR is, and then like how AI can change that game?
If we back up one step, we have this kind of 3 layers to the cake.
Right.
In any kind of B2B marketing sales operation. You have the marketing function whose job it is to get attention for the company, generate those leads that come to your website, poke around, and then hit a schedule a demo link and then fill out a brief form, right? The shorter the form, the higher likelihood that they're actually going to fill it out. So that's one thing. Basically, we have these 3 layers to the cake, right? You have the marketing function that will generate the leads. They will do events, they will do outbound, they will do PR, they will do all sorts of things just to bring people to the website, who will then fill out that form. The shorter the form, the higher likelihood that they will fill it out. So you're not going to put a long survey in front of them. You just want that contact information. What happens next is that the inbound SDR gets that lead in the CRM. Their job is to go and look up who that person is, look up their LinkedIn, for example, go to the company website, understand what they're doing, what they, how to approach them. And then they come back to them and respond and says, thank you for inquiring about such and such product on our website. And I would love to set up a demo with an account executive. Here's 3 questions, and those questions will be customized based on who that person is, what the product is, what those qualifying questions should be for that company. And once that person answers them, they're able to then quickly realize, okay, is there some follow-up? And on average, it takes about 9 touch points to get them scheduled and get a demo going. Going back and forth, and there might be questions. And then you set up a call with the account executive. The account executive's job is then to pitch the product. They requalify the prospect, they pitch the product, and they try to get the deal done, right? There might be a proposal involved, etc. Now, the account executive, that's the real salesperson. They know the product, they know how to sell, they've been doing this for a while. The inbound SDR is typically the first job out of college, total grunt work, first sales job, first sales or marketing job for somebody if they're going in that direction in their career.
Right.
And the reason that's important is that, first of all, these are very important gatekeepers. These are the first people that your prospects will encounter. That's one. Mm-hmm. So you have to make sure that they're trained well and they represent the company well. But they have to do certain things really well. And the irony is that if they do them really well long enough, which could be only a couple of months, they will become an account executive. And then you're out there again, recruiting, training, retaining SDRs. And usually when I build sales teams, I would hire 2 or 3 to keep 1 or keep none at the end of a month or 2 to see who's actually able to do the job. And it's incredibly frustrating when you're throwing all your marketing dollars and you're getting people there, but then that's where you drop the ball. So that's kind of what, how it works right now. But what we're doing is,
and I will point out too, it's a really big cost center to hire people. And when you have to hire and rehire for a position, there's a lot of lost value in each time you have to do that. And start over from scratch to bring people in. It's not an insignificant cost.
In the real sales operation, it's continuous. It never stops. You're always hiring and training SDRs. You're recruiting them out of college. You're doing things. That costs a lot of money, right? But you need to feed the beast, especially if you're scaling your sales team, your sales process. And that's where a lot of sales teams actually struggle. That's 99% of the time is that's where they struggle. They can't get the talent in the door. To get them going, right? And you have to design a whole training program and have people that are in charge of that. So what we do instead is that, imagine you've hired the Michael Jordan of inbound SDR that's working for you 24 hours a day and is doing everything the way it's supposed to be done every time without fail, consistently, 24 hours a day in 2 minutes or less in 35 languages, right? So that's the experience, right? No human can compete with that. They could be the best SDR in the world. No. But what we do is that lead comes in. We see the path that they took through the website. We understand what their intent might be. We go through our proprietary database because we encounter the same people over and over again. But also we go out to the web. We'll look at their LinkedIn. We'll look at their website. We'll combine all that information with the company's sales playbook and with our best practices and the pooled knowledge of this person. If we encounter them before, we know approximately when they read their email, if they respond well to casual emails or formal, long or short, we know them, we know how to talk to them. So we're combining all of that and we're responding to them in under 2 minutes, 24 hours a day on your behalf with not an autoresponder, but a very personalized response that's trying to qualify them. Now, our objective for Autonomous Agent effectively is to qualify that lead. Qualified lead, we schedule a call with the account executive. If we don't qualify them, they're not ready to buy, we will nurture them. So we will come back to them in 30 days, in 60 days, in 90 days, in a year. and we will try to
and you remember
them.
to do that.
And we remember to do that.
That's not like an SDR.
Exactly. So we take the, all the faults of the humans out of the process. And the question is, oh, well, isn't this bad to replace humans with automation? Honestly, this is the type of grunt work that needs to be replaced. Nobody is going to, nobody's growing up and saying, one day I'm going to be an inbound SDR. My kids are not saying that. I'm sure yours are not. They want to say, hey, I want to go in sales and marketing, but that grunt work kind of coming in and doing that, it's not a fun job, right? There's better ways of training salespeople than doing this kind of automation and pushing paper around, right? So that's how we see it.
We talk a lot about AI changing things and replacing things, and we've had this big generative AI movement right now. And one of the things that I've been finding is that people's initial excitement over AI has been very tempered after they get AI, because they're like, okay, so what do I do with this now? And a lot of the use cases that wowed them in the first place had a tendency to be kind of novelty use cases, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're cool, but it's not a like everyday kind of thing. I think, the thing that's interesting here is I'm always looking for places where AI can fit in and actually add a lot of value. And it seems like this is a really good place for AI to add value, right?
No, absolutely. Obviously, when ChatGPT came on the scene, everybody who's been in the space for a long time has been paying attention to this. I originally got interested in it when I was, corporate VC at HP looking at future of work, and chatbots came on the scene 8 years ago. So we were paying attention, but you have to have the application for it, right? For it to be kind of useful for you. I mean, I know my productivity is through the roof because there's a lot of things that I would just sit there and do manually. I can now, 80% of the work is automated in my day. So same thing with salespeople. These are some of the busiest people in business. They're hustling, they're running around doing things. But if you remove all the chores, they can be super productive on actually spending their time on what matters, on those relationships. And that's really what we're trying to do. Same thing, if you look at kind of on a personal level, whatever research you're trying to do, you're trying to plan a family vacation. Great, you go all over TripAdvisor and this and that. You go to different booking sites and you're looking at reviews. That's hours and hours and hours and hours. You can go to Perplexity now and say, hey, plan a sailing trip itinerary in the Caribbean in December with 2 teenagers, family trip. And it'll get generated.
Sounds perfect. I would love that trip.
I was just doing that last night. But it's, we like to sail a week a year, but
we love sailing too. So I'm with you.
Yeah. So the idea is like, all these hours and hours and hours, and then wondering, did I read everything? Kind of this FOMO of, do I have all the information? That's kind of done for you. And we're doing something similar, on a personal level, lots of really cool applications and saving of time. But on a professional level, I think salespeople and kind of the sales and marketing function will feel it the most, because that's where you're spending a lot of this missionary time to figure out, where should I go? Where should I get the information? Putting things together, thinking it through. You can kind of synthesize a lot of that and really simplify all of these chores. And that's what we're really super excited about, because it really improves the lives of salespeople and makes them much more successful, and saves them a lot of time. And you can feel it.
I want to kind of loop back to something you mentioned earlier. Where I see an enormous amount of AI being applied is in that outbound sort of capacity, going out and just like pummeling me with, sounds like a real person, sort of, but it's got that very uncanny valley feel to the communication.
Hope this email finds you well.
Totally, and it's like, I've even had them where they research, they find out where I live, which is kind of creepy in a, like an introductory email. And then they say, hey, did you know about this place in your town? It's a great place to go and hang out. And it's like some weird random place that no, that's not great. So it's like, so they try to be like really, like personable and all that, but it's just like, it just gets into the creepy space really quick. And then they, hit you with 1,000 of them a day. That is not you at all. So what you're doing is you're taking, inbound, that inbound process that is, like, and why don't you talk a little bit about like where you're getting those inbound leads? I mean, I assume it's come from a company website and things like that. Can you talk about the process of like how like if I was to reach out to a company and get put into that sort of funnel, like what are the steps that you go through?
So right now we're focused on the sales function, right? The marketing function has its job to do. The job is to create demand, to bring people to the website. The demand is, show me a demo, send me information, etc. Right. So let's put that aside for the moment. Marketing does their job, whatever marketing mix it is, emails, events, referrals, etc. They bring them in. So they set them up, we knock them down. The way we knock them down is that we see the lead coming into the CRM, just like an SDR would catch it. They would get assigned, by the CRM to respond to it. They see this new lead coming in, and they are supposed to do the research, etc., and then formulate a response. Copy paste from a template, customize it and send it to them. We do something, let's say, similar because we're pulling from this playbook, the sales playbook, and we're pulling from our best practices. But we do this much, much faster, right? So we'll go out there and we'll do the same work as a SDR should do, get their LinkedIn, get their website, et cetera, understand who they are, and then formulate a response. And then the next step after that is that,
So before you go any further, because you did mention it takes 5 minutes, you get 90% better results, right? If you respond, how quickly can you process that information?
We can do this almost instantaneously, but it's a little weird if we respond, as soon as you submit the form, you get a custom response back. Like, how did they know? So we aim for
research my company and
exactly. So we aim for, to respond in about 2 minutes. And that seems to be enough time to, click around and, somebody's sitting there waiting for that lead to come in. And, as soon as it comes in, they have the timer on 120 seconds, you need to respond. So
that's crazy. That seems to not freak people out. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, one day maybe it'll be a little bit more acceptable.
One day people get used to it. Yeah.
But it's funny, we the agent has a name. You would give it a name, and we seeing all the correspondence, and it's interesting. People don't, they think they're conversing with a human. They're sending calendar invites to this email address of the Sofie agent. And Sofie then, of course, responds, says, well, I can't accept your calendar invite, but let me set up an appointment with the account executive for you. Right. But we really passed that Turing test really well. So that question you were saying, it's really challenging. First of all, we're not in the spam business, but it's really challenging to go out there and kind of spray and pray and figure out ways of consistently kind of getting this attention from people. And catching them, most importantly, catching them with the time what they're actually looking for your product. It's almost impossible. It's 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 10,000. What we're doing instead is, it's actually, our job is a little easier because they came to the website, they filled out the form. We know what they want. We know what they're looking to do. So what we're responding back to them is we're asking some basic, qualifying questions and answering some of their basic questions that are kind of at the level of kind of this initial engagement. So if you think about, our job is much easier. And the same thing with the chatbots on websites that just don't really work well because people go in there and they ask all sorts of questions. It's very difficult to predict what they're going to ask. And the chatbot's job is very, very hard to respond in real time to all sorts of technical support, product support, pre-sales questions. Our job is much easier than that. And that's why our success rate is, nearly 100%.
Okay, so I've come in. I've been into the funnel. You researched. You reached out to LinkedIn and places, the website and things like that. You've researched me. You've custom tailored a response to me that takes from a playbook that I already have. So, if I have a sales playbook, how does that get input into your platform? We're
in a pilot mode, right? So we work with every one of our pilot participants, our customers, you can say. Very kind of one-on-one. And for us, that's really important because we need to learn what works for them, what doesn't work for them. We have certain hypotheses on how this should work, but reality, if you've been in the startup world once or twice, you understand that it's important to, more important to figure out how the customer perceives this and what works for them. So we set it up that way. But you can think about in the future, when we get away from the Salesforces and the HubSpots, and all that complexity, all we really need is that playbook, because that playbook will describe everything we need to know about your product, about the company, and what your sales process should look like. And with that, we can actually set up the entire workflow for you automatically, right? Instead of you spending 6 months and $300,000 setting up a Salesforce or any other complicated tool.
You've got the sales playbook, and the AI responds with the information, as per the sales playbook. Then what happens after that?
Our goal is twofold. Qualify that lead and set up an appointment with account executives when it goes into kind of this relationship mode. Or if we don't qualify, then we figure out, okay, there's a trap door. This is a marketing qualified lead, meaning that they fit the ICP. They're a potential prospect, but they're not ready to buy right now, right?
So this is all through email right now, right?
It's all through email. It's all through the questions that we ask them and that the responses that they give us. We realize, either, okay, we only sell products in the US, but this is somebody who's looking for this product in Japan. Okay, they're never going to be qualified, right? So we can leave them alone. We don't need to bother them. We can tell them, hey, we'd love to help you, but we don't sell in Japan, period.
Right, okay.
But if it's, hey, that sounds great. I've answered some of your basic questions, but you're going to look at buying this product or service in 6 months. Great, I'll follow up with you in 5 months. And let's talk then, right? So we'll do that nurture. So that's kind of the B scenario. The A scenario for us is, of course, we want to qualify that lead.
So that lead's qualified now, and then you funnel that to a salesperson. And what does that handoff look like?
The appointment shows up on their on the calendar. They see the notes. They see the correspondence in the CRM. They can do a little bit of homework on it, and they will go through their normal pitch, their normal demo. And they'll take it from there, right, to the finish line. So they'll create an opportunity out of it.
And all that 2 minutes worth of research that the AI did to collect all the information from, I assume all that raw research is included in there, and you have so you're leaving them with a lot of information to talk to this customer, I would assume.
Yeah,
right?
So we enrich the contact. So it could be as simple as name and email that comes in on the website, name, email, phone number, whatever it is. That's all we need, because then we can match that professional email with their name, figure it out, who's the company, all these things, enrich the contact for the salesperson. I mean, the salesperson can go and manually spend an hour or two preparing for a sales call, and good salespeople do that, but we're doing a big part of that job for them as well, because all that information is right there in the data, in the CRM. And it comes from these outside sources, but it also comes from our database that we're building over time, because we're starting to recognize these professional emails, and we can match them and say, oh, we know, John, he's John from Adobe or whatever company. We know this person. We know how to talk to him. We've seen him before in our network. And so that's also another benefit long-term for our customers, is they're getting access to this kind of pooled data, this information that we have that's not just out there publicly. So it's more behavioral information rather than just what's their title on LinkedIn.
So you guys are a fairly new company. I mean, you're, like you said, you're still in pilot mode. Could you talk a little bit about where you're at, and when do you think you're going to be hitting the market, and when your big push is going to be, and all that?
We're certainly pushing because the time is now. The time is right.
But we're also doing it.
This is a good year to do it. We started SofieLabs a couple of years ago to really explore the commercial applications of autonomous agents, if we want to get technical for a second. Because that's what we're using. That's what we built. And we went after this particular pain point, this problem, because we've experienced it ourselves many times as we build sales teams at our companies.
Right.
And we see this opportunity. So for us, we're in this pilot phase, which is very important for us because it gives us an opportunity to kind of one-on-one get feedback and tune the product, tune how it works, and kind of this behavioral psychology aspect of it, of our customers being confident and not being afraid of using AI, but being confident in the results that they're getting, in the correspondence that's being done on their behalf. There's a lot of really important things that are happening that are non-trivial.
Yeah.
And and we're rolling out. We're going to be expanding from the pilot and going beyond that with full functionality, as soon as possible. But it's very important for us to get through this phase to kind of tune the way we approach solving this problem. I've simplified a lot of things of how we actually work, but under the hood, you can imagine we have a whole kind of AI pipeline that manages the communication, the what ifs, and et cetera. And there's a lot going on that needs to be tuned to work just right for this to be valuable to our customers.
So if a company is struggling with their pipeline right now and they wanted to reach out to you and get involved in the pilot, are you still looking for people to be part of the pilot, or should people be reaching out to you? And if so, how how should they reach out to you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go just to our website, SofieLabs.com, SOFIELABS.com, and just give us your email address, very simply, right? We dog food it, and we'll come back to you quickly and set up a time and discuss, try to understand how your sales process works now, where it hurts, and figure out if we can be helpful in that process and get you in the pilot.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine you get a response within 2 to 5 minutes, right?
Or faster, yeah.
Or faster.
Yeah. We get lots of folks, competitors and media, etc., submitting the form. Those are not qualified leads for us. So.
Yeah, no. Well, so where do you go from here? I mean, obviously, you've got a lot of building still to do, and but so what's the future look like for SofieLabs?
Yeah, I mean, our North Star is to really, if we're in this kind of sales marketing domain, our North Star is to support salespeople and make them more successful. Companies as a whole, but it starts with individual salespeople and ultimately marketing people too. So that's our North Star. That's how we are building what we're building towards. And what that means is that you can imagine eventually we're going to be, we're kind of in this middle section of the pie right now, but we're going to be kind of going out both to creating assistive technologies for salespeople to speed up some of the other things that they do downstream, and also some things for marketing teams to automate some of their chores and make them more effective. So then, we're kind of expanding from there. And as a whole, you can see that really that becomes what a future CRM should be, is you hook up your marketing channels, you can tune what works, what doesn't. You're qualifying in the middle. There's conversations that happen that are automated. And then there's support of, there will always be a place for account executives to have a relationship with the prospect, with the customer, but there's a lot of chores and a lot of things that they have to do just to maintain that relationship. So kind of that's what that looks like long term, and I think we'll get there pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, it sounds exciting, and I know it's a critical business function that a lot of people are looking to, a challenge that a lot of people are looking for solutions to. So, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate you talking about the chaotic state of the industry right now, and thanks so much, and good luck with getting this all rolled out. Exciting stuff.
Thank you, Chris. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for watching. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. And if you could, give us a like, think about subscribing. And hey, why don't you just go ahead and share this with somebody you think is, cool. Anyways, I will see you in the next one.